Welcome to Gorillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast, teaching Davids how to defeat Goliaths. Now here's your host, Mark Anthony Peterson.
Welcome back to the podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and business mavericks. If you're not a maverick, you don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of this podcast. In this podcast, we teach entrepreneurs how to defeat the corporate giant. Just like in the story of David and Goliath, David defeated a much taller and stronger Goliath, not by fighting the giant in hand-to-hand combat, but by using technology. A slingshot. The slingshot allowed the smaller David to attack from a distance that minimized the advantages that Goliath had over the smaller David. My name is Mark Anthony Peterson. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a futurist, and the managing executive at Serial Consulting, a leading small business strategy and technology consulting firm. I'm also the author of the book Gorillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. This podcast is brought to you by Serial Consulting. An idea can launch a business, a strategy can take it global. Guys, I want you to support the show. And you can do that by liking the show or subscribing to the show. You can also leave a comment. You can subscribe at iTunes, Speaker, Podomatic, or in your favorite podcast platform. Please also check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/gorillapreneur. Support the show. And you'll be the first one to get some of our new Gorillapreneur merchandise as soon as it comes out of the manufacturer's shop. Before we jump into today's show, guys, I want to remind you that it's hurricane season. And I am teaming up with Airbnb Open Homes, a program that enables community members to offer free temporary housing to people displaced by disorders. During disasters such as Tropical Storm Barry that just hit Louisiana, one of our greatest needs is making sure every resident has a safe place to stay. With hurricane season around the corner, this is the time to prepare. If you are able to offer free temporary housing for neighbors impacted by the disaster, sign up to be an Open Homes host by going to airbnb.com/mpeterson, MPETERSON, all one word. You will only be contacted when there is a need. This will add a great tool to our community's disaster response toolbox. Now, we have a great show for you today. We have Miss Nancy-Solari, founder of Living-Full-Out. She has a terrific story to tell that will inspire every entrepreneur. All of you who have hit a wall, thought about giving up, maybe didn't believe that what you were doing was ever going to catch on, you need to hear Nancy's story. She has had everything in the kitchen sink thrown at her in life, and she has learned to pivot and become successful at every new thing she took on. Why did she have to pivot? Because she was gradually losing her eyesight after becoming a very accomplished broadcaster. So she had to learn to do something else. When you listen to her story, I hope it will inspire you to accept where you are so you can plot a course to where you want to be. Here's the interview with Miss Nancy-Solari. We have a terrific show for you today. You know, in past episodes, we've often talked about knowing when to pivot in both your business and in your life. We've also talked about knowing when to outsource and bring in those individuals who can help you by managing those tasks that you aren't great with, right? Giving you more executive capacity so that you can do more things. Well, we have a special show today. We have on the line with us Nancy-Solari. She is the founder of Living Full Out, and her story, if it does not inspire you to do more, to share more with other people and accomplish more, then you did not listen to the podcast. I'm so excited to have this episode and to share her story with you today. Nancy, please tell everyone on the podcast a little bit more about your background.
I have to say, like so many of us, the road can be long and it can be twisty and turny, right? And in my early years, really at 10 years old, I experienced watching my parents, break up due to a divorce, and watched them go through a lot of domestic violence moments. And my sisters struggle with eating disorder. My mom had breast cancer. And then the topper was when, at 16, my two sisters and I were all diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye condition, which today there's still no cure for, so it's causing me to go legally blind. And, I weathered those storms and, kept my ambitions and dreams near and dear to my heart. But, life happens and the hardships keep coming. That's just kind of how it goes. And so later in my life, I did experience infidelity, infertility, financial loss, sexual harassment, just another large bag of different challenges. But along the way, one of the things that I always kept my eye on is I wanted to live full out in life. I wanted to learn what I could from the hard moments and try to make it a glass half full mantra and take from it what I could and then, be able to have a joyful life. And trust me, there are hard days, but I choose to be happy. And I think in life, that's a large part of what it means to live full out.
Absolutely. And you've accomplished just so much in your life, so many different pivots, turns, businesses, opportunities that you have taken on full on, knowing that you had retinitis pigmentosa. How did that affect the priority setting process for you in your life, and what path did it put you on?
That's such a great question. Well, back when I was 16 and I was diagnosed with this condition, I just wanted to get my license, right? I just wanted to, see myself going to college. But it did really make me have to think about, gosh, if I go blind by 40, which is what they told us, what are some of the things I want to see with my eyes? What are some of the things I need my eyes most for? And I kind of put together an early bucket list. And my sister and I, because again, we both were diagnosed with the same condition, we took 2 months and traveled all through Europe, 26 different countries. I went to Japan as an exchange student. I did go to college and got 2 degrees in broadcasting and psychology. And then there were some other things in there as well. And then I kind of pushed everything later that I would only need my other senses for. Like I could taste things at any time later. I could hear things anytime later. But it was kind of game on with seeing what I wanted to see while I could.
And in that, you developed a very specific career plan that I think most people wouldn't think about if they didn't have that sort of diagnosis.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had multiple careers, and I did start my first career in broadcasting. But as my vision started to change, one of the first things was I couldn't really see anything clear. Like I would look at a teleprompter, and instead of seeing a whole sentence, I would maybe see like 2 words of it. And it was just really hard to even look at like a newspaper and read a whole sentence. It was just the blind spots were starting to gather. And so just due to trying to figure out those changes, I did transition into the music industry and enjoyed that for for various reasons and some not. But again, the night blindness took effect at that point. And, I remember being one time on stage performing, and I almost fell off stage because it was so dark and I couldn't even see the edge of it. And I transitioned out of the music industry and then went into real estate and loved real estate, was a top producer for 13 years. However, the vision took another jump and the lines on the road started to disappear. And that was a tough one because I did have to give up driving, which was a loss of independence. And I had to figure out, how to still do all that I wanted to do without being able to drive. And then I transitioned again, and I created Living Full Out. And that's really because I did a lot of soul searching in and out of those different careers. And I witnessed and watched a lot of people go through hardships and successes. And so what I wanted to do is dedicate the rest of my life to helping other people connect the dots to get to where they want to go and have the strength to make adjustments when they need to. And so that's what we've now created in terms of what Living Full Out offers.
Now, I want to go back and unpack that a little bit more to let the audience maybe get a little bit more insight into that career path, because you just didn't transition out of careers because you were being told to transition. You were very successful. I mean, you achieved in broadcasting what a lot of people work their entire life to get to. You were in a top market on a very well-known program.
Yeah, it was, here I was, in my early 20s, and, just when I look back at demo tapes, I look so young. It's amazing. But walking the halls at Good Morning America, I remember seeing Barbara Walters, and I couldn't believe it. And it was just such a magical time. But in some ways, I still had a lot of life growing up to do. Some of these seasoned professionals, they were in their 40s and beyond, and I was still in my early 20s and, trying to figure out who I was going to be as a broadcaster. So it's interesting because when I made that jump from broadcasting to the music industry, it wasn't because I didn't enjoy broadcasting, but I had some concerns about where my vision was going, and would I be able to keep up with that competitive industry? I just didn't know how I was going to keep up with it, and so I embraced making that pivot into the music industry. But it's interesting because if you're meant to do something, and I do have the gift of gab, but if you're meant to do something, it will come back around to you, because although I stepped away from broadcasting back in 2010, years later, I found myself hosting my own radio show on KFWB in Los Angeles. So, it was a dream that didn't end. It just took a pause.
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize that, because for people in the audience that have been towards or at the pinnacle, it's hard to walk away. And I know it must have been, as you were looking at your vision and seeing the success that you were having, to make that pivot. But you pivoted into another very successful career in being a professional singer. And to me, I want to learn, or what helped you understand the right time to pivot from broadcasting to singing to then real estate. Was there a framework, or was it purely driven by the lack of vision?
Again, great question. Every transition I may have made in my careers have all been based upon really just kind of assessing the environment, seeing where I was in terms of my longevity, my abilities, because I always want to give my best. So, again, with broadcasting, that was one of the reasons why I transitioned. It wasn't because I didn't love it and I didn't want to excel further in my career. I just didn't know even how to verbalize my own vision changes. And so it was hard to know what I needed to excel in that career. Now, with the music industry, that was a little bit different. Although I had a successful network of agents and managers and other artists that I was working with, what I realized there was that the lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it really wasn't my lifestyle, meaning that I remember being one time, it was at a pre-Grammy party, and just the amount of drugs that I saw people doing, the way that the way that people were acting, and it was just this particular group that night, but they weren't my people. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror as best as I could, with my vision changing, obviously, but I just decided this was the time. This was the time. I had lived that experience. I had a great time, but I remember at the time I had a boyfriend who was in real estate, and he encouraged me. He says, with your personality and your drive, you should go into real estate. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, I've always been curious about the industry, and got my real estate license, and off I was going. And so in that transition, it was somebody in my life who said, you know what, I recognize your talents being X, Y, and Z. Why don't you try this? So sometimes a pivot or a transition might be our own inner need to make a change. It might be because we realize it's a toxic environment, or it's not the right people. And sometimes those who know us best will shine a light on the direction we should go to.
The real estate pivot is the one that moved me the most personally, because in our earlier discussion, you mentioned as your vision started to dissipate and you could no longer drive to your showings, you started riding the bus. Can you describe that to our audience and what you had to go through to make sure that your showings were successful, and just everything that went into that?
Absolutely. And there's two specific stories I'll share with you there, because again, I was very busy. I was selling a lot of homes, and when I had to give up driving, it wasn't like I could just drop my career. I had clients to serve, and they needed homes by a certain date. And so that's when I quickly assessed, okay, how can I get to where I want to go and do all that I need to do? And this is before Lyft and Uber were around, right? It was taxi cabs, drive yourself, or walk. So, but there was the bus. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to take the bus. And so I would find myself, for example, setting up a showing to this multi-million-dollar house. And I would take a bus, and I would get there early, and I would turn on every light. I would memorize all the steps. I would know everything I needed to know to give my clients the experience. And so when they showed up in their BMW or their Mercedes, they would have a great showing. Then they would leave, and I'll admit I still was trying to find my confidence during this time. So I would wait for them to leave, and then I would turn off all the lights, and then I would walk back to the bus. And oftentimes I had multiple showings. So I would take anywhere between 2 to 12 buses in a day, because sometimes showings were so far apart, it would take transitioning from 1 to 2 to 3 buses just to get to that location. And so that's kind of one example of just the tenacity that I had to have to really, keep going in the moment. And the other one is related to open houses, because again, I didn't have a car to put all these open house signs in the trunk and drive around and put all these signs on various corners. I would load my arms up with anywhere between 4 to 6 open house signs with some flags, and I would, have my briefcase, and I would get on the bus, and I'm pretty sure that the people in the bus were kind of lifting an eyebrow going, why is that realtor on the bus? Because I would definitely need like a whole section of seating just for me and my signs. But I would get there 2 hours early, and I would walk the neighborhood, put out all my signs, again, get to the open house, turn on all the lights, memorize all the steps, do my showing, and then after this 3-hour open house, it would take me another hour and a half to go pick up the signs, get back on the bus, and go home. So it really took a lot of stamina to do both of those jaunts, but at the same time, I think that in life, when your back is against the wall, like, you will do what you have to do to keep going. And sometimes when we're in kind of our complacent mode and life is good and easy sneezy and we take our foot off the pedal, we we don't get so resourceful. But I love the way that, I and so many people, probably of your audience, when you have to dig in, when you have to find those resources, find that strength, you will.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the story, because it's at the heart of what I call a gorillapreneur. When your back's against the wall, you have to take what you have and make what you need. And you are a shining example, an inspiration for people who are thinking about making a transition, a pivot in life. You and just the story of making a showing work required more energy than people probably put into their job in a week. And you did that for just one showing. And you were successful. You were a top producer in a very competitive Southern California market. So that shows that, like you said, the tenacity and the drive to succeed. And I don't think you would do that unless you were intentionally, and forgive the phrase, intentionally setting intentions every day.
Well, I would definitely agree with that. And I also want to let your audience know that for as much as I do have a smile on my face, there were times that I was on that bus and I would look out the window and a tear would come down my face because it was hard and the days were long. But at the same time, I knew that I had the mental ability to negotiate a really good deal for my clients. I knew that I had a lifestyle that I wanted to live, whether I had vision or not. So again, it was those visions for my life that kept me going. But there were definitely some, hard times, walking the streets, putting out signs, when I don't even know where I'm going. It was just a really chaotic time, but I got through it. And I also took the time on the bus to learn, which I think is important. I know that people who drive can, learn another language, by putting, CD in their car or whatever it is they listen to, or, having it accessible. But I took that time to listen to motivational videos on my, at the time, iPod. And I took that time to learn so that when I got off that bus, I was ready to go for it. It wasn't like I was listening to sad music. I surrounded myself with motivation.
Unpack for us the process that you went through in setting an intention for that day. When you knew you had a showing, how did you motivate yourself?
Well, I think that what I always remembered was that I was in the service industry. Like, I represented a client. And so there wasn't really the time for me to have low energy, or get distracted. Like, I had to give my best to them. And you become friends with your clients. You want the best for them. You want to find the right property. You want to negotiate the best deal. So really what kept me going were two things. Again, the vision I had for my life. Like, what was I making all this money for, right? You kind of have to have an intention as to why we even work. Why do we do what we do? So I was very clear on why I was working and what I was making all the money for. The second thing is, I just really wanted to make sure that I didn't let people down, So I had to walk multiple blocks and put out signs, So I had to ride, 6 to 12 buses in a day, and that's how I spent my time. To know that I could close a deal, to know that I made a difference, like I helped a couple find their first home they ever had together. Like, those were special moments, and I really felt like I was a part of somebody's story. That was their first home. That was a part of their book of life.
I want to continue to unpack the real estate experience a little more. When we spoke earlier, you mentioned that the retinitis pigmentosa forced you to think about outsourcing certain tasks that you could no longer do effectively, and that helped you to become more successful. Can you walk us through that and help us understand how that improved your real estate business?
Absolutely. And you know what? It's interesting. I still do that today at Living Full Out. Back at the time, bus system. That was great. That kept my business going, and it just took a lot of energy from me. But then I said to myself, okay, listen, the vision might even get worse. And it did. So I went from being able to see a computer screen to all of a sudden the computer screen being white, like I couldn't see anything. And so what I did is I ended up hiring an assistant, and then I had 2 assistants. And so I hired people to do what I could not do. So, for example, I couldn't drive, so then I hired somebody to help me do all my showings. I had another gal come in, and she helped me, look for searches for clients on the computer and send out emails and listings. And the thing is for me, I did find a way to pay those people. And not everybody has those means, right? But I didn't have those means. And I remember there was a time after the real estate market kind of fell flat in 2008, I wasn't about to give up again on my career, so I rallied once again, and I remember getting a part-time job so that I could pay for the assistant to visually do what I could not do. And although at the time that might have seemed, counterproductive in terms of, well, why are you doing a part-time job? Why don't you do it yourself? I couldn't. So sometimes, again, you just have to do what you have to do. And so I was happy to work a job, to make X amount of money, to pay somebody to do what I couldn't do. But again, that allowed me to take my business, another 3-4 years down the line by cracking that code.
Now, one of the things that I really appreciated about our previous discussion and around this subject was that you put a framework around the hiring of these resources, that you set a time frame over which you would look to try to get a payback or a return on that investment. And if you didn't get it, you would pivot and try to reuse those resources in a different way. Did I recapture that correctly?
You did. And I think that's one of the keys to owning your own business is you have to test, you have to tweak, and then try things, but at the same time, be willing, able, and courageous enough to pull back. So whenever I needed somebody to do something, let's say I was hiring them to do social media, I would figure out, okay, I'm going to give this a month test. I'm going to pay them X amount per hour. I'm going to set so many hours for them to work. And so I had a budget in mind. And although I may have had to work a little extra before I hired that person just to have that money in the kitty, I would then hire the person and then see where it went in the month. And you will know oftentimes within 2 weeks to a month how well a service, a person is performing. And so sometimes I would say, that was the wrong direction, let me try this. And I would go in another direction. Because in real estate, you do end up, buying certain services to get leads online. And so even some of those, I had to test them, I had to take a chance. But without taking a chance, you don't get the big reward. But again, you don't want to go, into a place where you're financially at a deficit. I think it takes planning and then it takes risk at the same time.
Now let's continue down that path, because you do this hypo testing, you build a successful model, you are top producer in Southern California, and then 2008 comes along and the market takes a downturn. You tell me you still have a successful model. The market has changed. You believe it's going to come back. And then, as you mentioned earlier, you work another job to keep these resources that have been successful for you in an up market available to you. I think you're being modest. I think you worked 3 jobs, right?
Well, I did do a lot. I remember during that time, it was wild. I had one job, and this was just, literally, so many people lost clients, people couldn't get loans. It was just such a mess in 2008. But again, that's when I needed to up my resources. So I had one job that I would do from 8 to 1, and then I would have my assistant come pick me up, and then I would go back to the office and I would do real estate. And then I would actually, at that point, do some pre-living full-out work, because at that point I was also studying to get my coaching certification. And then in the evening, I had another job, and that would be from I would say 9 to 12. And then I would do it all over again. So it was really long days. But the thing is for me, I was working multiple jobs. For other people, they might work 2 jobs, and then on top of that, they got to come home and, make dinner for the kids and do homework and all that. And although it's a good job, it's a whole other job on its own. But again, I think it goes back to the fact that in life and in business, you, number one, have to have passion for what you're doing. Number 2, you have to believe in yourself. I believed in my ability. I believed the market would come back. And I knew that if I hung in there, the payoff would be there. And then at number 3, I think you do have to take risk. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to try this. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, be courageous enough to step back. But I think there's so many things that goes into owning and operating your own business.
You, by all accounts, have had to deal with a lot of different issues, as you highlighted earlier in the podcast. Some we haven't talked about in your personal life that would strip anyone of motivation to continue to push forward in building a career or a business. What has been your inspiration to keep you going? I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there deal with a lot of anxiety. Some are solopreneurs, so they don't have anyone that they can share their fears and their failures with. How do you keep going after facing problem after problem, issue, downturns in the real estate market, your vision pushing you to change from successful career to successful career? What kept you going?
What I've learned over time is that in the early years, and this was when I did see, it kind of felt like you had to say the right thing. You had to have the right look. You would shake somebody's hand and, what do you do? And instantly get into business. But what I've learned over the years is that is not what enrolls people. That isn't what builds strong partnerships. And so when I have faced all these challenges that I have, I didn't realize down the line how important they would be in business. So when I meet somebody now, yes, I might be curious about, how their business works or what they do, but I more so connect with them in a life way. So, I kind of find out, are they married? Did they go through a divorce? Do they have kids? Do they have a disability themselves? What has been some of the hardships that they've faced? And it's amazing how such a bond and a strong sense of camaraderie can be built. So rather than feeling like you have to keep up with the Joneses or play the part or anything like that, it's much better when you can come from a place of being humble and being honest. So I remember back, halfway through my real estate career, after I had to give up driving, I had a hard time coming clean with the fact that I couldn't see. Remember, I was planning out every step in the house, turning on all the lights, But eventually, when I was able to say to a client, I'm losing my vision, when I was able to confess to people I was dating, you know what, I'm really enjoying your company, but just so you know, there's the likelihood that I might go blind. To say those words are scary, but once you do that, you actually take your power back from the hardship. So rather than letting, a financial crisis or blindness or, abuse or any of those things label me or hold me back, what I've learned is that by talking about them, you diffuse the power they have over you, and that actually allows you to be a better professional in being able to network and connect with people.
I think what I took from our pre-discussion was a phrase that I think you laid out that said something like, you can't plan where you want to go until you accept where you are. And that was so powerful for me because so many entrepreneurs are afraid of where they are. They're afraid of the data that they may see on the financial statement or the lack of sales coming in. And so they will bury their head and not face the reality of where they are so that they can better plan where they need to be. And your whole life is an example of how you've been able to master that and master the life pivot and the business pivot.
Mm-hmm. You know, when we consider these pivots, these life pivots, again, for your audience that's listening, hopefully all their businesses are thriving, right? We hope that's the case. But again, you may thrive for 2 years, 10 years, but then things could still change. And I think you have to take in consideration, or at least I did, you know, has your passion, has your, you know, taste of life changed? Because we can start a business early on. We can have a career in mind, and then as we grow up, as we evolve and change, all of a sudden we want to try something new. And I'm here to say today that it is okay to embrace the new, but the only way you can embrace the new is to let go of the past. So rather than feeling like you have to, you know, do it all, or, you know, sometimes people might think, well, gosh, I was doing this business or I was doing this career for, you know, 20 years of my life. I'd like to try something new, but what if? You know, the what if game is one that I like to play because people will play the what if game in a negative way, and that list will always be longer than the positives. I like to play the what if game in a positive way because what if you don't make that change? Think of all the people that if you don't embrace that new business, if you don't embrace that new career, think of all the clients that miss out on your talents. Think about the services or the products that you're going to invent that if you don't take that leap of faith will never get created. And I love watching shows like Shark Tank and The Profit and you name it. And when I watch these shows, you know, all these different products and services were created by somebody taking a risk. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but we're in this game of life to play it out. And so that's what I do. I play out my game of life.
Now I want to move into your most recent pivot, living full out. So as you recovered from the downturn in real estate, you mentioned earlier you started the seeds for living full out. Tell us about that pivot and what that's designed to do for the people around you.
Absolutely. So again, when I was considering starting living full out, having been through broadcasting, been through, you know, building a singing career, been through 13 years of real estate, I knew that it wasn't just, hey, I'd like to do this and do it. You have to put some thought into it. You know, I had to go and get educated, go to school and get my certification in coaching. I had to get media trainers, you know, people that would help me learn how to craft speeches and understand, you know, the marketing of the speaking industry. I had to figure out, you know, what was going to be living full out's secret sauce in this big industry of motivation. How are we going to be different? So I did put together a business plan well before I ever invested anything. And then it took baby steps. I went for the coaching first. Then once the coaching had kind of been established and we had clients going, I layered on the speaking. And then as the speaking was growing, that's how KFWB found us, and they came knocking on our door, and then we started the radio show. And then the radio show grew, and so, you know, Living Full Out has been around now for 11 years. But it didn't just happen in a snap. It took testing and trying and keeping to that plan and bringing on people who knew more than I knew. Because The other thing that I realized a long time ago, and again, I did a lot of this to the time when I was in real estate and I had to hire people to do visually things that I couldn't do. Well, I took that same delegation ability to living full out. And I didn't need to be the accountant, the attorney, the copywriter, the web designer, I mean, no one wants the blind girl doing it anyway, but I knew that I needed to find people where that was their passion. That was, their talents of what they were good at. And most of all, I wanted to make sure that everybody who worked for Living Full Out had the passion and the desire to help people. And so it's really been a special road, and we've built a great company of teammates that show up every day to know that they're making a difference. And so I feel really good about that.
Take the audience through that planning process, because it's amazing to me how your life started in broadcasting and ended up with Living Full Out right back in front of an audience sharing your message. And like you said, it didn't happen overnight, but it didn't happen for lack of planning, because you planned a lot of this out using some of the same frameworks. So as you laid out that plan to move into coaching, what were some of those major steps that helped you know that you were on the right track?
Well, for example, there was all that, when I was in broadcasting, I had to think about image and branding and learning how to choose your words, right? Because broadcast copy is very short. It has to be fast. And then when I was in the music industry, that was my creative outlet. That was writing music. That was performing. That was, again, learning how to make something out of nothing, right? Because how was I going to be different than any other singer? You really had to start to figure out, what was going to be my unique selling proposition? What would make me different amongst other singers? And then I would carry all that into real estate. Now with real estate, I was delegating. I was building teams. I was learning, how to do marketing, learning how to, negotiate contracts, and that kind of built. And then when it got to the time of Living Full Out, it was taking what I had learned in all of those different careers and applying it to the Living Full Out journey. And so I took those same marketing skills. I took the creative, the need to figure out how Living Full Out was going to be different, all those business skills, the negotiating skills, and that's what allowed us to really have a nice, solid foundation when we started. And you're right, it is very funny to know that broadcasting came back around, but I think inside, I never really thought it was gone. It was just on pause. Even singing has never really been gone. It was on a pause. We did a series called Going After Your Dreams a couple years back. And one of the things that I ended up doing was I went and I tried out for the show called X Factor. And I took my audience on the journey. I would keep getting these golden tickets every time they would say, yes, you're through. And so, or I've sang the national anthem at different places, boxing matches, and you name it over the years. So even singing has never gone away. I didn't settle in as my primary career, but it's still within me. So I'm here to share with your audience today that, your passions don't have to die. You can just put them on pause and pick them up later down the road.
And it sounds like those passions helped you to develop characteristics, traits, and strategies that made Living Full Out very successful. And what I've boiled it down to is it sounds like you developed a set of 3 Ds where you learned how to differentiate, delegate, and develop a brand across each of those life pivots. And you applied all of that, it appears, to Living Full Out, because it sounds like you have some really big plans for what you're going to be doing next with Living Full Out.
Yeah, absolutely. We plan to further grow the show in terms of syndicating that, and we definitely have various books that we're going to be coming out with in the next couple of months, 2 years here. We've already got those laid out, as well as continuing to provide coaching and speaking. And one of the things that I think is really important is to use social media for the greater good. And so we don't sell things on social media. We tell people stories. So we will find people all around the world who have overcome something, and we tell their story and why it's inspiring. Or we'll go on and we'll find these silly national days. Today is National Whatever Day, and we try to make something uplifting or motivational out of that. And we also use social media to ask our community, what do you want? What guests would you like to have on the show so we can best support you? What challenges are you facing? And that helps guide us on what blog articles to write. Or, where do you wish you had some coaching or, even the education, and we create webinar courses based upon that. So I just think it's really important that you want to have intention, you want to have a focal point of what you're shooting for, but you also have to keep things fluid enough that you listen to your community and create what they want. There's nothing worse than creating a product or service because you think it's a good idea, but you haven't tested it against your community to see if it's something they want.
Absolutely. Amen. In past life, when developing technology and solutions, I've always come back to the reality that it has to work for the target audience. And simpler is always better, because if I'm trying to impress myself, I'm an audience of one, and I'm not going to pay for the total cost of that development. But if I want to be successful, I have to find an audience of millions who share the same outlook in life. And if I'm not tapping into what they want, my business is not going to be successful. And that's what I love about what you've done. I mean, you have followed that path perfectly as you have examined both your capabilities and competencies and matched those against the life goals that you wanted to achieve. It has been really inspiring to learn all of that.
Well, I thank you for that. And, the thing I also want to make sure I share with your audience on my own personal note, and then what I hope that they gain from today, is I didn't know that going legally blind was actually going to be like a superpower, okay? Because it actually has allowed me to have more focus. Like, I'm not drawn by flashy objects. I can't see homeless. I can't see race. I can't see age. I can't even see gray hairs and wrinkles, right? I honestly, I listen to people, and I get to know people on their personality, on their voice, on their passion, on their integrity. Do they show up on time? That all fills into me what I think the person is like, not looks like, but what they're like. And I think that your audience can apply that same thing. If you've gone through a divorce, if you've had a financial loss, think about how you survived. What lessons did you learn? And take those and let those be your own superpowers and let them guide you in finding the right partnerships, creating the right products, services. It's amazing how if we look backwards at our growth and what we've learned and how we survived, it actually allows us to take those steps with more confidence because we can see that growth that we've had.
This has been a wonderful discussion. Before we wrap it up, I really want you, if you don't mind, to speak directly to those entrepreneurs who may be facing a challenge and thinking of stopping and pursuing their life dream. What words of wisdom would you give to them?
I would say, first of all, be still. Be still and listen to your mind and your heart at the same time. Because chasing a dream that you've lost passion for means you're now just chasing. Checking boxes or living up to other people's expectations means that you're giving over your life to their desires. And so when you're still and when you're thinking things through and you're really listening to your heart and your mind, then you can make better decisions, more calculated, focused decisions. And I also believe in planning. My friends kind of make fun of me because I am a planner, but, back when I was in real estate, believe it or not, when I was sitting at those open houses, I would take an 8.5 size paper, I would fold it like a book, and on each of the sides, I would have real estate, and I would list out all the things that I need to do for real estate. On another side, I would have living full out, all the things I want to pre-do for that. I would have, miscellaneous, all the different errands I need to do. And I would make these lists, and I would check them off. And so sometimes having those lists keep you on track also. And then most of all, trust your instincts. Go for it. Because you never want to look back and say, I wish I had. I wonder if. It's better to try and to say, okay, well, that didn't work. Or it's better to say, wow, I can't believe it. I knew it could happen. But if you don't try, then you'll never know. And so I want everybody to go out there and live full out and be humble, courageous, realistic, but at the same time, just go for it.
That's very, very wise advice. Where can the audience learn more about Living Full Out and about Nancy Solari?
They can go to livingfullout.com, and when you go there, everything is there for you. You have access to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, you name it. You don't have to struggle looking for us. We're right there. You'll have access to our blogs where we have so many different lifestyle articles. We have courses that you can participate in. You can listen to radio show after radio show after radio show of all these different topics and inspirational guests. And most of all, we want you to know that you have a home, you have a place to go where you can get inspired. And we would love to hear from you. Again, we do this for you. So if something today has inspired you, or if you want to know more about a story, feel free to reach out to me at connect@livingfullout.com, and I'll definitely be able to help you out.
Well, Nancy, this has been a terrific discussion. I've learned a lot through this discussion, and you've inspired and motivated me. Now, everyone in the audience, if you didn't listen to the podcast the way I heard it, then you need to go back and listen again, because I have been moved. We've learned a lot, and I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your life, sharing your stories, and explaining to us how you mastered the life pivot.
Thank you very much for having me, and just always remember, everybody, the pivots are a good thing. Embrace it. Don't be afraid of change. Have fun.
Thank you, Nancy Solari, for such a terrific interview. It inspired me, it motivated me, it made me do a self-check on my own motivation. And I hope it did the same for you. If you enjoyed the show, please support it by subscribing, sharing, commenting, and liking the show. If you like Gorillapreneur, you may like one of my other podcasts, Career Coaching X's and O's, where I help those of you who aren't quite ready yet to be an entrepreneur find your way to the corner office. And Gigging, Everything in the Sharing Economy, for those of you who want to know what's going on with the sharing economy and want to hear my predictions on what's coming next. Remember, guys, hurricane season is on its way, and I'm teaming up with Airbnb Open Homes, a program that enables community members to offer free temporary housing to people displaced by disasters. If you are able to offer free temporary housing for neighbors impacted by a disaster, sign up to be an Open Homes host by going to airbnb.com/mpeterson. M as in Mary, PETERSON, all one word. That's airbnb.com/mpeterson. Gorillapreneurs. Scott Sullivan said it best in episode 7. Be a mace, sharpen those spikes, and remember, if you're not breaking something, your company might be the next thing that gets broken.
Thank you for listening to the Gorillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may also enjoy the book Gorillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Follow Mark Peterson on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Gorillapreneur. Now I want to close with a quote from the great Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. Keep fighting, Gorillapreneurs.